Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it to our to the next of our series of webinar videos. This is I think this is number 30, 32 or 33, something like that in a row. We've been doing having a great time with these. They're getting tons of feedback back from folks saying that they've enjoyed them and learned a lot. One of the things though that I've been getting in some of the feedback that has been happening has been, you know, hey, it's been great when you first started out, you were talking about functionality and giving us all sorts of little tips and tricks of how to use the tool better and things like that. And that has been great. And but what we're thinking about as well now is maybe taking a couple of weeks and hitting it hard with analysis. Okay, how do I use the tool? At the end of the day, we've just got off the track. What do we do? And getting that from a number of different people and in a number of different forms of motorsports. So that's what we're going to start doing today. And what we're going to do is we're going to have Peter Krause, who's done I think 3 or 4 other webinars already with us so far, is going to start us off on this process. And the one that we're going to talk about today is 10 minutes to an action plan using aimsports data and video. So that's this one here is going to be more of a bringing all the pieces together and okay, here's a data set. What do you do? And we'll start off with a little bit of an intro into it, with the PowerPoint slides and okay, what kind of stuff do you want to look for and kind of set the plate. So that we're looking forward to that. The couple of things though to get us all started is some of our normal stuff. You've got your chat box. I see a lot of our friends are in there chatting back and forth with each other. We enjoy the heck out of that. So continue to do that. Let us know where you're from. You probably already did that. I didn't have a chance to take a look, but in the chat box, make sure down at the bottom there's the to button, and you have the opportunity to send to just the panelists, the all panelists part, or what you really should be doing is do that little pull down and set that to all panelists and attendees. So that way everybody that is viewing the chat can see what you write. So, and then of course you have the option of sending just a chat to an individual or just the panelists here that are watching in the background. So make sure you do that. Keep chatting over there, throw some things out there. That's where you're gonna see a ton of links from Robbie from our California office is throwing some links out there. He's already thrown up a couple that Peter Krause's AIM resources page, and he'll be doing some more as they go. So those are going to be there for you to be able to click on and get to that information as well. And the other one is the Q&A box. Make sure that you have that active and that you are if you want a question answered during this webinar by Peter or myself, make sure you take it out of the chat and put it into the question and answer box. That is the one that we're going to be monitoring, and we've got some of our AIM staff in the background here are watching it. Maybe they'll answer the question before Peter and I get to it. But if it sits in that box for a little bit, Peter and I will take a look at it and try to fit that into a live answer as well. So the chat box for having a good time and asking some basic questions over there. But if you want it answered here, put it into the question and answer box. Okay, perfect. Let's start off with one of our polls. The last time, welcome back to a lot of you that came here for the Race Studio 3 analysis beta webinar that we had last week. We didn't do any polls for that one. We really wanted to focus on getting as much information out as we could, and the feedback from that has been fantastic. We've got lots of folks that are using it. Again, it is a beta, so it's not something that you want to work your entire racing program around. You want to continue to use Race Studio 2 analysis and then look at that for maybe the data video linkage or to learn it and help us build it into a even stronger program. So you can run those in parallel. So keep that in mind. But today we are going to have a few polls and help us understand any number of things about what we're doing here. So I'm going to start the first poll as we kind of get up to speed. And the first poll is what AIM devices hardware do you own and use? Select all that apply. It's a multiple choice question. There is an other down there at the bottom. It's other / SmartyCam. If you have something else that you're using, type it over into the chat box. Other equals whatever it happens to be. And this is mainly just the hardware. The data loggers or that kind of stuff. If you have a Lambda controller or a GPS sensor, we assume those. But of the pieces of hardware, go ahead and type that in. That would be great. We'll let that run for just a second. We'll while I jump up to the next slide. and let's introduce Peter. We're gonna roll through this one in maybe a slightly different way. We're going to introduce Peter. We're going to talk a little bit about some slides to kind of set up how he and some of his friends actually do this quick first, what's super important, the first thing you look at when you do data analysis type work, and then we'll jump into some live data. So Peter's, again, this is probably Peter's fourth webinar with us. I've known Peter for quite some time. We do a lot of seminars, on-site seminars at his place at his VIR office, and have always had a great time. And it's always fun to visit VIR, number one of the most beautiful racetracks in our country, certainly, and of course visit Peter and all of his good customers as well. So, Peter, tell us a little bit about yourself as we start to roll up here into our next webinar.
Well, thank you so much, Roger. This is really a great opportunity. It's a fantastic commitment by the folks from aimsports and Sportline to propagate information on how to leverage this equipment into really an incredibly useful tool. I am coming from a little bit of a different perspective in the fact that I use the tool as a technology tool to validate what drivers do. I've done this full time for about 15 years. I've done it part-time for almost 30 years. And it is amazing that the rate of progression in the technology is fantastic. I see, close to 50% of the people out there are using Solos, which was a groundbreaking device when it came out 10 years ago. And the idea is spectacular. 20 years ago, it would have taken $20,000 worth of hardware to get the kind of information you get out of a modern car's CAN bus connected to a Solo DL. And the additional leverage of video, of which I am a huge proponent of, has been made easy with tools like the SmartyCam, where you have a fully rendered video and you can pull the card out 20 seconds after you get back into the paddock and really take a look at it. But I had a race preparation shop for SCCA club racing and historic racing in the Eastern United States for 25 years. I sold that about 15 years ago, and now I have done this full time for 15 years. I have a commercial facility here at Virginia International Raceway. Up until about 2 years ago, I was on the road 200 days a year, working one-on-one with drivers because it was easy to bring me to them rather than the other way around. And I use these tools. I sort of hung my hat on using simple, inexpensive data acquisition devices, not even with necessarily a car connection, to get information to help drivers decide what are the one or two things they need to do the very next session in order to go faster without adding risk. The majority of the people that I work with are not professionals. I do work with professionals frequently, but a majority of the people that I'm working with are people who are trying to go faster, but they need to drive their car home, or they don't need to be spending money fixing it because they're going to be paying for it. So the whole idea here is to use this technology and teach people to coach themselves. That is the number one goal that we're trying to do. I think, I know Matt Romanowski, who is an exceptional analyst, will be on later in the week. And all of us bring a unique amount of experience and perspective to looking at this information and turning it into an action plan.
Perfect. I'm going to share the results of that poll before we move on and continue on. You can kind of see that there's a pretty good mixture of hardware. So we'll take a look at those results down the road and continue to fine tune our understanding of who we're targeting and who we're running at. I was watching the chat go by, Peter, as you were introducing yourself, and one of the questions was that where's Peter's race video looping in the background? I don't know what that means exactly, but no, we had a little trouble. The very first one at Zoom was having some issues in the peak of the pandemic, and Peter had a video running in the background, and some people thought that was the problem, but I don't think it was. But so we still have that ongoing joke, so that's kind of good. The next one, the next thing I'd like to do is just kind of start the list of some things that you might want to talk about. Is okay, yeah, we're going to talk about the video, the reviewing data and looking at this 10-minute review thing that we're going to talk about. But you've got some slides here. I'm going to run the slide. You're going to talk about them. But how to set this up, and why do you do what's the background of why you're doing it this way? And so I think it's great that we talk about giving a little bit of a lead into it before we start. So let me know when you would like to go to the next slide, and let's slide through a little bit of information about why you do it this way.
So one of the reasons why I focus on this particular aspect is I am a full-time professional driving performance analyst. I'm a coach. I see a number of people who are attending who are exceptional coaches and analysts. David Free out there, a tremendous amount of experience. We all bring this stuff, David Arkin, we all bring our experience to this and try to distill massive amounts of information into short, quick action plans. We're trying to identify opportunities for improvement. We're trying to validate to make sure that the information we're looking at is correct and we're not going down a path that may not be supported by multiple views of the data. And then we are coming up with one or two goals. We are targeted and highly focused in what we're going to do the very next session. That's the key. Is the goal really here is not to look at shockpot data, not to look at engine health data, not to look at anything except what the driver just did. Roger, you and I talked about this yesterday in our sort of run through about the value of looking at this information right away. Being able to come in, download this information, look at a simple speed trace. I wanted to make sure that this wasn't all about me and my own idea. I am always learning. And I've told people a million times, the more I do this, the less I know for sure. But I went out and I sent a whole bunch of information, just a simple question to a whole bunch of people that I really respect, and their answers are part of this presentation, and we're going to talk about it. But our goal is to review and identify opportunities for improvement. We want to ideally and ultimately use the video and data within the same window of Race Studio 3 analysis. But right now, you're going to definitely look at the video first, because that is going to establish the context of what you're looking at in the video. That is really, really important. Then you're going to, by using the video, you're validating simple things like gauging track position. Am I utilizing the full width of the track? Am I touching every apex or coming close to every apex? Then what you do is add the data to look to see, is what I am looking at backed up by what my feet and my hands are doing. This idea of control input, timing, and amplitude is the difference between good and great drivers. So we want to pay attention and validate using the relationship between multiple measures, throttle to brake, brake to throttle, that sort of thing. Then finally, you really want to keep the creep to a minimum. The goal here is absolutely positively no more than 2 goals. I've given drivers 3 goals for the next session, and they've forgotten all 3 of them. So the big issue is 2 goals. We're trying to correct any observed errors. You're going to have, so much of this is just squaring what actually happened with what you think happened. And what we want to do is we want to figure out what exactly happened, and we want to correct those observed errors. So if I'm missing a corner more than once in the video, then I need to work on that corner. But then the next thing is to leverage opportunities for improvement. And that's really next. After the line, After choosing the path around the racetrack, the next step is to optimize acceleration and braking, the fore aft, the longitudinal G generation by what you do with your feet. That's the biggest thing.
Right. Peter, while I'm going to change to the next slide, but I'm going to run another poll since you kind of hit on a couple of things there that that I was going to poll anyway. I'm going to launch this poll here, and it's of the folks that are watching. How often are you looking at your race data now? Right. Don't worry about what you're going to, you're probably going to learn some things, and or may have learned some things in the last 2 or 3 months of watching these webinars. But how often do you look at your actual racing data? While that's running, there's we've got some great folks working in the background from AIM here, and there's a couple of questions in the Q&A that I'm going to ask you to go ahead. Normally, if we don't answer them for a while, sometimes they'll answer them and they'll go away. Can you please keep Andy's question of setting a race camera? Do you prefer to have the view, see the driver's hands and feet? That camera view one, leave that one up there at the top. We're gonna Peter and I will answer that towards the end of the webinar with something we already had in mind to do. The second one, while the poll is going, Peter, run into that one down the road whenever that one fits. Is what channels do you like? That probably fits into one of your slides here in just a moment. And what does a professional driver want to see or evaluate from John? Peter, you'll probably, I think that's included in some of your slides coming up as well. So yes, those three, especially that top one, I want to hit later. So leave that one in there if you would, Brick and Robinson and the guys. So. Okay, let's end that poll and let's take a look at what it says. And Peter might enjoy this, and let's share those results with everybody. The number one result, and there are multiple answers here, so that the numbers don't always add up to exactly 100%, obviously. But 64% of you do take a look at the data once you get home after a track event, and frankly, I always did too. It's not my go-to. My go-to is to look at the data right away, but I'm also taking a little bit of a deeper dive later on at the end of the day or at the end of when I get back to home or the office. So the next highest one is at the end of the day at the track, and then after each session on the track. So give everybody kind of an idea of where people are doing this, especially Peter, as he's so he knows his audience a little bit better. Those are kind of handy. So I'm going to stop sharing those results and get those out of the way so everybody can still see what Peter's talking about. I'm going to go to the next slide, right, Peter?
Absolutely.
Okay.
One of the things that I think is really cool is, Andy Whittle, I really do like to see the driver's head and hands, because I am trying to optimize the performance of the driver. And the reason I'm trying to do that is because the driver is the largest performance variable in the whole equation. It really is important, and you'll see this later when we start looking at some live data. But here, what do other pro coaches look at first? And Tom Long, who was an apprentice in my shop in 1997 and 98, went to the SCCA driver school here in 2001, and I was his chief instructor at VIR. In a time crunch, what do you look for? And he said, always the speed trace. And so, again, Roger, I don't know if you coined it, but the point is, you said it, is the money channel, and it is the money channel.
Yep. It
is absolutely positively easy to look at just the speed trace after each session. Just look at it and see if there are any pauses or hesitations, any delays in throttle application. We'll talk about that in the live data. Really important. Finding the biggest deficits, okay? The idea of multiple minimum speeds at a particular corner indicates that the braking is probably not as consistent as it could be. And where good drivers become great drivers, and the biggest single difference between amateur drivers and professional drivers is the consistency of the lap time and the consistency of the speed and the track position at every individual point on the track is remarkably similar. That's the key. We also have the ability to have exceptional performance. So we need to find the areas where we nailed a particular corner. And that's why the video is always good. And that is also why it is important to look at the speed trace, because that is the money channel. Utilizing the time compare, This is dating back to the first webinar that we had with James Clay. James used the entire webinar to overlay speed data with the time compare function and identify, zoom in to the area that needs the most work because it is the most inconsistent. It also tells you how much penalty or gain there is when you do something well, or you could do something better. So speed trace and the time compare from Tom Long. Of course, you can always add throttle and brake later, and I encourage you to do that at the end of the day or between sessions if you have a little bit more time. But this 10-minute idea, if you can just get it into your head to take a quick look at the video, download the data, look at the quickest lap so that you know and have context for the fastest lap that you look at in the data, then you can simply and easily verify that you did the right thing. So next slide, Roger.
Perfect.
So we're going to David Murray. We go from a young gun to an older gun. David is a fabulous mentor, has helped a lot of people, runs an excellent series of track days. I have contact information for all these people on the bottom of the slides. I recommend all of them incredibly highly, but they just were fortunate enough to answer the question that I threw out, which is, in a time crunch, what are the two things you look at? Again, speed trace for the decel angle through the braking zone. So this whole idea of the decel angle, the shape of the speed trace, conveys huge information. We'll talk about that again. So the decel angle through the brake zone, if everything is working right, if the braking is working right, and the driver is executing well, it should be relatively almost linear in its decline. The throttle brake trace for timing and pumping of the throttle or the brakes. That indicates yes, no, yes, no. So the reason why we keep talking about brakes is because everybody, when their foot is on the ground, when their foot is fully on the floor, you can't push the gas pedal any harder. It's against the stop. That's all the car will do. However, braking is a highly subjective skill execution. People brake different ways because they're anxious, because they're not sure, because they say, hey, where's your braking point? Some people should be focused on where is my finish of the brakes? Where do I roll off and roll into the corner? That's all part of putting this action plan into place. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Next slide. So here, I didn't want to leave the karting people out. I have a tremendous respect for Davin Sturdivant. He's really a wonderful soul and a great teacher and a great explainer and very humble about what he does. I'm not a kart expert, but this is priceless information. These are pearls of wisdom, just small drops that really, really make a big, big difference. And here he's saying anywhere where there's a big gap between speed channels every lap, zoom in on that. I didn't realize it, but he said, if I'm sliding the cart too much, I lose speed that I can't get back. So it can be a problem for whatever reason. It's definitely indicating, the data is indicating that he's not carrying good mid-corner speed. But then he looks before and after that point to see whether or not his entry is screwy. Maybe he's trying to roll a little bit too much speed and he can't make it, and he has to wait for the speed to scrub and then go. And that's why the exits would be poor because of that. The next thing he looks at is RPM, because the first thing you need to do is make sure that the gearing is within an acceptable window and that you are reaching maximum desired revs for maximum acceleration. You also want to make sure that you're not going below. Ray Phillips did a great thing. John Block, with his online AutoWare webinars, talks about OVBO, over rev bogging. And those are areas of RPM operation outside the desired range of the engine. That's what Davin is looking at in the karting. Next slide. So
I'm
the next,
super. Davin's been a friend of mine. He's in my my neck of the woods here, but and he did a whole bunch of videos with us early on about karting that you can still see it, still find on YouTube. What I am just absolutely pleased with is I see a lot of the stuff that I chatted with Davin about in that first bulleted item, and in his own words, which is very pleasing. So good job, Davin.
yeah, absolutely. So of course I do a tremendous amount of work with Ross Bentley. Ross came to me, I guess, about 7 or 8 years ago and said, look, professional racing is really sort of taking a big hit from the last recession in 2007, 2008, 2009. Where are people going? And at that time, I was experiencing an explosion of growth working with club level drivers and track day drivers, people who had no competition aspirations. They just wanted to take a high performance car out and go fast as they could. Safely. So Ross really has shifted a lot of his focus to the development of high performance driving education, instructors, that sort of thing. We do a lot of collaborative things in terms of virtual track walks to get knowledge into people's heads so that they don't have any questions on the racetrack. And that shows up in the speed trace. I'll talk about that later. But again, he is looking at the shape of the speed trace, looking for obvious coasting, which is a gentle decline. Trail braking where appropriate, where you see a roll into the corner, really big difference. Big throttle corrections, suggesting a line or overdriving issues. We have a fabulous example that Roger will share with you from an LMP3 car at Dijon in France, thanks to Emiliano. We're going to share that with you on screen. And this is why the video is important to establish the context of the data that you're looking at. Obviously, overlaying 3 to 5 laps to look at where the inconsistencies are. You really need to use this stuff to find and focus on the 20% that'll really make a difference and jettison the 80% you're doing reasonably well. No one has the bandwidth required to kill the whole lap, but if you can find out where you need to work on, and this is how Ross does it, that overlay of the 3 to 5 laps to look where the inconsistencies are is a big difference. Of course, Ross works with such a wide variety that he would condition that, hey, what is that? But I can tell you, any driver at any level can do what we're talking about today. I'm talking about ranked novices, and I'm talking about people that I work with that have won the 12 hours of Sebring, the 24 hours of Daytona, and their class at Le Mans. So this is all relevant to every level of driver. Next slide, please. So Seth Thomas is a wonderful, wonderful driver. He's based in Atlanta. He has won an IMSA and World Challenge. He won the first Indy Continental Tire Sports Car Championship race. Was a teammate with James Clay for years and years, still does some driving with James. He is a great coach, and he's very gentle, but he does not mince words. And he is looking at the difference in speed between laps. Are we establishing a common thread here? I mean, if you're sitting there looking at the differences, this is what every level driver looks for. What was the cause of that? Can we? He goes right to the chase. Seth says it can be one of either 2 driver inputs, either brake or throttle. Notice we've said nothing about turning the steering wheel. We've said nothing about shocks. We've said nothing about engine health. We've never said anything about tire temps, which all is important and a small part in the ingredients of success. But the main driver is, what is the driver doing with their hands and feet? Because that is the difference. And that is the reason why there is no car that cannot be driven quicker by somebody else. That is the crux of my business, and certainly the reason why we're looking at it this particular way. The next thing Seth does is he relates the inputs to very specific turns on the track. And he goes over and reviews visual references, not only at the track level, but at eye level and above the car in front, so that if there is somebody between you and the apex, you still can create a sight picture, which allows you to line stuff up. This is not data specific, but it is available to you in the video review, and video with data on it. Intelligent video is a really important tool. That's why we keep talking about this. Next slide. We're doing good, Roger.
We are.
I think. So Jonathan Goring, I used to watch Jonathan Goring riding around in a perambulator at Lime Rock with his parents, Keith and Susan. And I can tell you right now, he's turned into one of the finest drivers I've ever seen and I've ever worked with. He's a Spec Miata national champion in SCCA. He's also an IMSA Lights prototype champion, cars that I love, that I have a very dear. I love sports prototype cars, and Jonathan really was able to put in a dominant performance when he won the IMSA championship. But he's like me. He jumps in and jumps out with people at the track, and they say, "What should I look at?" They say, "What should I look at?" And he says, "Speed trace. Find out how much difference is in the corner between the laps. And then use the time compare function when you are comparing laps to find out where, and not only where, but where in the corner the differential is greatest." And that's what points you. If it's on the leading edge, it's usually braking and brake release. If it's on the trailing edge, it can be throttle application, or more likely car position, which is preventing the driver from progressing to wide open throttle as soon as possible. Next slide. Lastly, Mike Skeen, I was the chief instructor for his first driver's education event, which was March of 2004 here at VIR. His father is a doctor at Duke University Medical Center and a driver of historic cars. And Mike has turned into one of the finest drivers anywhere. He is multi-talented, multi-purpose, and fast in every car he drives. He's also a very good instructor and a very good coach. He not only is able to lay down a reference lap, but he can really help people focus and define, distill all this information into this action plan that we keep talking about. He says, if I'm comparing to good data, if you have a reference lap and your lap, where are the biggest differences? That's going to bootstrap you in finding out where you need to work on most. Well, this is a global problem. Your braking is not as good as it can be. That's the issue. This is to establish trends. What he's looking for is the biggest delta swing or the differences in the speed trace. Again, and where that happens in relation to each of the corners, and where it happens in relation over the course of a lap. Then look at brake pressure or longitudinal G if unavailable. So you've got this, you've got this solo, which has no connection to the car at all. And you can get good information from GPS longitudinal acceleration. We're going to look at that. Then throttle trace would be next. You're looking at the brake pressure and the throttle trace as support for why the speed trace looks the way it does. So don't get so stuck on driver inputs that you miss the big picture. And the big picture is that speed trace. Every one of these professionals has said that. And so it's not just me, it's not just Roger, it's not just everyone here. It's just very important. So just the throttle and the brake inputs will tell a big story if the comparison data is available. Just the way people apply their brakes. We're looking, Matt Romanowski again has done an exceptional piece of just a hero card that he used to hand out, and he may have some more, of what good data looks like and what data with an opportunity for improvement is. I say opportunity for improvement. I think he said bad, but it's the same thing. You know, it's the same thing. It's either right, or it's either optimal, or it's room for growth. And that's what we're all trying to do. So next slide. I think we can probably go into.
Let me tidy up a couple of things as we get ready to switch over to some live data for you to prove some of the points that you talked about. There's first thing I want to do is there's another poll that kind of ties all this together that I'd like to launch right now, and that poll is when analyzing your data, what functions do you use the most? Peter's been talking about measures graph, obviously, and the speed trace, and I'm with him 100%. And I think this poll will show us that that's what most people do as well. But there's a couple of things that I'd like to tidy up just with what we just saw there. Were the top, certainly, five or six guys that are in the top 10 driver coaches in North America, and they all virtually said in their own words the same thing, right? They speed trace and then digging into driver inputs to understand what happened. And I have a way of looking at that, and it's a little phrase that helps me understand and not get too deep into the weeds too quickly. Sometimes you need to, but it's what happened, where did it happen, and why did it happen? Boy, if you follow that little path, the what happened is basically the speed trace. Were you faster or slower, right? Or you can even look at the two money channels I always call it, the speed trace and the lap times. So what happened? Find the area you want to go look at. Where did it happen? Not just that it was turn 5, but it was at the entry into 5, the middle of 5, the exit of 5, kind of a thing, right? Understand where it all happened, and then ask the question, the final thing, which is the biggest one, which is why. Why did it happen? Was it where you placed the car, or was it because you were on the brakes, too hard, or as Peter was talking about, off and on the brakes? Did you coast for a while leading into the corner? That whole why thing is really what we're getting to. But by having a path, what happened, where did it happen, why did it happen, really seems to help me understand and get down to the point fairly quickly. So let's end that poll and let's share it and take a look at it. We've been talking about it for about 1:45. I'm going to end that poll, and then I'm going to share the results, and everybody can take a look at it. The measures graph, almost 100%, 94%. The next one that people are using is the time compare bar at 59%. It's part of the measures graph, but it's a very, very important part. So we do like to break that out. And then the next one, split reports are used by folks. Channel reports and math channels are the next two as well. So always good to see how people are using the software. It helps us when we're planning on what we're going to talk about next in the next few webinars as well. So I'm going to stop sharing those results. And Peter, if you had a chance to take a look at any of the questions as I start to get it set up, where I think the next slide is that.
John Barnum had a really good, John Barnum had a great question, which was basically, what data does the professional driver want to see or evaluate? The professional driver has really very little interest in this. I mean, most of them in a short debrief, not a lengthy debrief, not a 2, 3, 4 hours after practice going into the night, but immediately post session is looking at the measures graph and looking at time compare. A majority of the professional drivers that I work with and know are looking at the plus minus or predicted lap time information on their in-car display. They are trying to square that with areas that they may be having difficulty with on the track, either because the car is getting in their way of being able to do what they want to do and what they think the car ought to do, or realizing that there may be an optimal way for them to do it better. And then gauge immediately whether or not that helps. And by using the time compare graph in the immediate post-session review, determining how much benefit do you get. It's very, very easy to do that. So that's the big thing that they're looking at. Eric,
there's there's one other question there that I think ties in with that before you get to Eric's. Andy's got the question there. What other data? He says, what CAN engine data do you prefer to have in the log? And he goes on to throttle position, RPM. To me, as somebody that helps some folks, I'm not a driver coach, but I do a lot of data work. Hit on what are the most important things? We've talked about speed. We've talked about these basic things, right? The next most important thing to me is yeah, we need these basics, but then we need to have the the driver inputs, right? Peter's changing over to his live data here, so it should pop up in a second. The driver inputs, their hands and feet, right? Steering, brake, throttle, gear position. Those seem to be the next most important ones to me. And what do you think about that, Peter?
So again, on steering, well, I think steering is important and certainly worthwhile for a deeper dive. And I know, and I hope Matt is going to talk more about that Thursday. Honestly, all I'm really interested in is feet stuff. I really want to see, if you look at the way that I have arranged the top 4 channels on my measures on the left of this particular screen, you see GPS at the top, you see GPS longitudinal acceleration in second, and that is something that is available on any logger. So if you have a connection to the car or not, you still have GPS longitudinal acceleration, and that is a very good indicator of the shape of the deceleration that we're looking for. Inverted. Then if we really want to push it, we can add throttle position, we can add brake pressure. And I do encourage people that have this information to add this information, but don't start with start with this screen.
Yeah, you can get
start with the speed and the time compare. And here, I did want to just touch on Eric Penn's question about what about an autocross event. I did autocross for years before I ever did any circuit work. And I can tell you right now that an autocross is a microcosm of a qualifying lap. And so what you really want to do is many of the same things that we're talking about, the efficacy and efficiency and cleanliness of the control inputs, the acceleration, the braking. If we see consistent braking, consistent acceleration, good. If we see inconsistent braking or inconsistent acceleration, not so good. So this whole idea is directly applicable. The fact that you do only get 3 to 6 runs on, say, a 45 to 60 second course still gives you enough information to do an overlay that you can build throughout the day to refine your approach. So unless you ace the course and get FTD on the first run, you can always get better. That's the best thing. So let's see. I am going to look first at a fellow who's driving a street car. This is a Porsche 2018 Porsche 991 GT3. He was running around at VIR having a great time. But this was a comparison between a very early lap, his first lap, and his second lap. And one of the things that we keep talking about is you don't always need to look at the whole lap. What we're looking at right here is with the time compare on the bottom, we see that when we cross the start finish line, and I'm just going to check here. All right. So if we look on the GPS map, we can see where the car is, and we're crossing the start finish line. We're going down into turn 1. We're braking. Now, in the red lap, he braked earlier in the lap, and he didn't push the pedal quite as hard. Now, how do I know that? Well, I know that because in the blue lap, he went further, faster, and ended up just about the same speed. So if we look at where he ends up, okay, right there. So the minimum speed, and it's shown on the map to the right, is 43 miles an hour. Well, he started braking, and on the blue lap, he was at 150. On the red lap, he's 143. But then as we go after the brake application, there is a much greater delta or difference. This is what the driver coaches are looking at. They're saying throughout a braking zone that doesn't change from lap to lap, why is there a 18 mile an hour difference between 2 laps? clearly because he doesn't have a very good idea of exactly where he wants to hit the brake. He grew a lot of confidence and a lot of knowledge between lap 1 and lap 2, I can tell you that. But we can see that the delta or the differential, the open space between these two speed traces almost disappears at the end. And where we started the lap, there was no difference in the time compare. We see that down at 0.002 to the point where the speeds are the same at the minimum. He lost 9/10 of a second, and he hasn't, yes, he's just finished turning, but the point is most of it was through the braking zone where he hadn't ever even turned. So this is what David Murray is talking about when he talks about the straightness and the steepness of the deceleration. Why is he picking on deceleration? Because that's the most variable execution that people have. That's the biggest thing. Now here towards the end of the session, or towards the end of the lap, on his out lap, he pushed the brake pedal very hard. Now how do we know that? We can add the brake pressure and we can see that it was twice as much as it was on a quicker lap early on. So right here, we're looking at, I'll go to that. So here we have 373 PSI on the fast lap, 652. So he basically overslowed before the minimum speed turning into hog pen. And then the speed trace lines back up. But in this area between here, we see the differential 4 seconds. We go to the next spot where the speed traces overlap, and we're looking at 0.7 of a second gain by the blue lap over the red lap, just simply because he rolled a little bit more speed in there. Now, the next question I would have is, can he accelerate further, brake harder for a shorter distance, and then accelerate again? That's the next question. So I'm going to ditch this, and I'm going to go to some good data. So not my data, good data. So one of the things that we're looking for, actually, we're going to hold off for 1 second on good data. So I'm going to show you my data, which is okay, but not great. Here we actually see a little hesitation in throttle application in turn 3. Now, how do I know it's turn 3? I am going to put the track map back here, and I'm going to put the cursor where I want it, and I'm going to look at where it is on the track. And obviously there is a gentle acceleration and then a quick transition to lots of throttle. All right. How do we know that? Because part throttle, speed gradually increases. Full throttle, speed increases dramatically. Can we verify this? Yes, we can do this. So what I'm going to do is I see that in this particular corner, and I'm looking to see if I can't, let's see, here we go. All right, so on the map, I can see that I went back to full throttle at turn in. I probably braked a little early. I realized, whoops, I'm not going to make it down to the apex. I can't give it full throttle. It's like, you know, Matt called his cards go, no go. The good versus not so optimal. This is not so optimal right here. This is not, because what's happened is I have decided, I've made a command decision to accelerate fully. That was premature. I have backed out of it to the tune of less than half throttle. And then only then, when it becomes clear I can stay on the track and come out of it, am I going to wide open throttle. But your goal, and the first person that I ever heard say this was Stephen Johnson. And Stephen is a wonderful engineer in Rhode Island, been in the game for a very long time. Stephen said the goal is, and this is a good goal for engineers, race engineers, the goal is to accelerate full throttle all the way around the track. 100% throttle all the way around the track. Now, of course, you can't do that, but that's the goal. And that's, your goal as a driver. And that is one of the reasons why Skeen might be quicker than somebody else in the same car, on the same track, on the same day, because he has a percentage of full throttle over the course of the lap that can really make a difference. Now, this is a double-edged sword, because if you overslow, of course you can go to wide open throttle. So think about that. So what I just wanted to use this very quickly to overlay 2 other relatively quick laps around it. I'm going to back out to the whole lap. Let's see, we're going to go back to 1 lap. And of course the colors are not so great. So we'll just change that to green, and we'll change the 201. So all these laps are within 9/10 of a second. Actually, if I get rid of this, all these laps are within half a second. Now, I'm going to get rid of the TPS. I can look at that later. I don't need that supported information. I can tell that areas where this is overlaid, or there is a time compare that changes radically but then comes back to stasis, to reference, to 0, that's not an area that I need to be concerned with. So put turn 1 to bed. All right. Right now, all 3 laps are that far apart right here. Now, obviously turn 3, I'm having trouble. Turn 3, I really need to get a better idea, and I need to be more decisive in the turn in, and I need to hit my marks first and foremost, and I need to go to acceleration. Now, the very fact that the red lap speed comes up a little bit sooner and doesn't go down as far initially, I'm gaining speed going in, I'm maintaining it coming out, okay? It's anytime these are parallel, the 2 laps in comparison are the same. Excuse me. The next place to look at, this is one of the hardest places on this track. People would like to think that they can go through this big sweeper all by themselves, but they can't at 1 speed. So here, this little confidence lift, and that's verified by bringing in TPS, big confidence lifts. Look at all those confidence lifts, all right? Now I'm gonna get rid of all of this, and I'm gonna add somebody who is a lot better than I am. And I'm gonna use my friend, let's see, I'm gonna use my friend Ben.
While you're setting that up, go ahead and just continue on.
Yep.
Some of you may have noticed, at least it's happening on my end, the screen sometimes is 5 or 7 seconds behind what Peter's talking about, but we certainly are getting what the main gist of it. But also, while Peter's setting that up, he said something, and I just wanted to kind of throw in my 2 cents worth. And I've been lucky enough to work with some people that are pretty darn good, pro drivers, and I have always been able to find areas of improvement in pro drivers' data. It may be small, it may be something. They're digging hard to find those areas of improvement as well. I've always been able to find areas that you could improve, and I've always been able to find moments of brilliance in virtually every other driver, right? So don't worry that if you get your pro data versus the amateur guy or yourself or whatever, there's probably going to be some spots. In fact, we're looking, Peter just brought this up. There's times when that blue line trace is going down, which means that while Peter was the slower of these 2 cars, I think, we'll see in a minute, there's times when the blue one's faster. And so there's moments of brilliance in everybody's data, and there's always moments of improvement for everybody. So keep that in mind. And also, Peter, click as early as you can, and then the video seems to catch up with you in just like 3 or 4 seconds behind.
All right. Well, we'll finish this up, because this is, I've been able to illustrate the main points, and
no, it's good. No, it's all
but
good.
the most important thing is that Andy Whittle had a question about setup versus the driver. If the driver won't whack it, won't go to wide open throttle, is there something we can do to the car to make that happen? And I'm going to tell you right now, you can make the car work as perfectly as possible, but if that driver does not formulate a confident goal for where he wants to go or where she wants to go, and what they are going to do when they get to that point, and then decisively and fully commit, all of your work is not going to be fully leveraged. In my opinion, and this is my experience, setup is very important. But what setup is is providing a platform that the driver can have the confidence to commit. That is why we focus on the throttle position and the brake pressure in every one of these, or longitudinal G. Hell, I can get rid of this and I can just add GPS longitudinal G, and I can see right here that me in the blue car had a big lift, a little breathe in the throttle, whereas my friend Ben in the red trace, he was able to drive and power on through. So this is a really, really important thing. We're not using any sensors. We're just looking at it. If I'm looking at this in my 10-minute review after comparing our data, I go out the next session and I say, I need to reduce the amount of time that I'm not fully committed on the throttle in this area, because this guy driving a similar car doesn't have to do that. So that is the big issue. Now, if you look at a better driver, you can okay, so here are two of his laps, okay? His slower lap is green, and his faster lap is orange. And what happens is he got a poor run onto the front straight and crossed the start finish much slower. So his slower lap, he was up. When I say up, he was ahead of the orange car lap by 0.6 of a second by the time that he applied power to get back on to come out of turn 3. But then what happened was there were a couple of other things that he was much quicker on the power. He had a little bit of a breathe, that he got back on it, and he climbed out of that deficit so that by the end of the lap, he's less than 1/10 of a second apart as we go into, oops, I'm sorry. Let me just click on that. There we go. Right at the pivotal braking point for Hogpen, which is the last corner leading on to the start-finish straight. This is where the orange lap really made a lot. I can hit the animation feature, and I know there's a delay, but we can see by looking, maybe not. I'll stop it when it gets to the start-finish line. And what we're doing is we're looking at the time compare number on the bottom left-hand side, and I'm just going to stop it when it finishes the lap for me right now. And if we look at that, it goes from less than 1/10 to 2/10. So he picked up 2/10 of a second just in throttle application. He used exactly the same amount of brake. It was just throttle application, and we would have to look at the video to be sure, but the attitude and the heading of the car, this is why Race Studio 3 Analysis Beta is the answer to all my prayers. We're going to be able to look at the video and say, hey, he was pointed to the inside of the apex, and the car is set sail, and he can fully commit, which is what Andy Whittle wants his driver to do. I do believe steering speed, Antonio asked that question. I think steering speed is very important. And I think that the measure of how fast you turn the wheel, not just how much, but how fast, really makes a difference. So that is something that, while I wouldn't use in a 10-minute review, I certainly would look at the end of the day for sure.
The 10-minute review always, it gets you some of that basic information. It gives you maybe 75, 80% of the way there, right? And just like just the speed trace gets you most of the way there, but the 10-minute review, then it digs into, okay, later on, end of the day, or back when we're at the office or at the shop or in the hall or the night, that night, we dig in even deeper. But that first one is what we're talking about here, what you've been describing. Very good.
But when I look at this speed trace, this is a thing of beauty. Yep. The transitions are quick and clean. The changes in direction are crisp and clean. There's no periods, lengthy periods at low speeds, which is what really is the time killer. It's just very attractive. I'm going to
Perfect.
stop sharing now.
I can just grab it back. No big deal.
Okay.
Let me share my screen. Let's put a little bit of what Peter was just talking about and tying it together. And tying it together with Ray Studio 3 at this point, right? Peter talks about the effect of having that video, the data together. There was some things he was doing there, looking at a couple of things. Now, why did the driver do this, or how was he able to get back to the throttle earlier, right? Sometimes just having that video and having it tied to the data is everything, right? So what I wanted to do is kind of end this with since we have now talked about Ray Studio 3 beta and it's out there available for you if you wish to have it and start to work with it, we can Emiliano shared some data with us, some video, and I wanted to find an example of where what Peter was going to talk about could be even enhanced with this style of with this software and having the video and the data linked. So here's the data that Peter talked about earlier. I think everybody's seeing it, and so I've just got it set up. I've got a couple of laps active, and we're looking down here at the time compare bar, and everything's kind of going along, decently. And then all of a sudden, there's this time here where the blue one lost some time. So what I wanted to do was look at it and say, okay, well, what happened? Where did it happen? Why did it happen? Right? The things that we always just the path that we tend to follow. And in this case, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit on this corner, just so we can make it even a little bit easier to see. We're going to zoom in on the location down here, on the GPS map down below, and with the Google Earth background imagery on it. And now I'm just clicking in the strip charts in the measures graph, and I'm just dragging this along, right? So we're looking at the entry into this corner down here in the lower left. And you can see that the two dots, if I zoom way in, we can actually start to really pick up on, where the driver went a little bit, driver's right on entry, a little bit tighter on the apex as he's coming down in there. We'll get Peter's feedback here in just a moment. And so as we're coming along there, heck, at this point, the red one's a little bit, 3 miles an hour quicker. Down in here, the driver's turning it in. If we look up here on the right side, you can see the video from both of them. The upper one is the red lap and the lower one is the blue lap. It's signified by the color of the slider bar in the video itself. It gives you a good idea of which lap is which. And so the interesting thing here is all of a sudden the blue one is rolled through the middle pretty good if we're looking at the speed trace here. Rolling through right here, gosh, 2 miles an hour better. And then all of a sudden something happens to the blue one, and this is what we want to see. And we're the first thing is we're looking at the speed trace. Whoa, something happened here. Okay, we see what we kind of see something that happened, right? What happened? Lost some speed. Where did it happen? It's on corner exit. It's starting to accelerate out. It's right here where the throttle, where the driver's going on to throttle. The blue one's lagging on his throttle on, right? Okay, these are all just hints walking us through this process of what happened, where it happened, and why did it happen. We need to know why. That's where we're heading. So then you can talk with the driver. We can talk about engineering the car, talk about engineering the driver, whatever our goal is. And but here, look at where the driver has placed the car. And I may, we can make this even a little bit bigger, maybe. Nope, it's about as big as we're going to get them.
You can actually see a difference in the heading of the car.
Absolutely.
If you look carefully, the red car is aimed further to the right
already
than the blue car.
Yep. And here he's kind of heading out here. Yep.
Answered my prayers, Emiliano.
Yeah, exactly. And yet the speed is fairly similar. In fact, if any, the blue one is slightly faster at this point, right? And what Peter talks about is the car is not even pointed the right direction yet. That is, all of these things are going to affect and force the driver to get out of the throttle here in a moment. So I'm going to slowly forward move myself forward with the cursor here. So, and the video is going along with me. And as you kind of see how now we're approaching the outer edge of the track. He's opening his hands up as he's coming along. Again, still the blue is very, very close or just a tick behind on speed. But
track position laterally, he's much closer to the left in the blue in the bottom.
And even if we zoom in here, down here at the bottom where it shows us the driven line of where the GPS sensor actually was, you can see that there's a difference here. The driver is driver's left coming out. You can see it in the video here. And then all of a sudden what happens is we get up here and look where the driver ended up with the blue lap, right? You can see that there, this probably at one point was grass or gravel. I think it's now green astroturf now, right? And but either way, you've hopped the curb, you're over into something with zero grip and probably a little bit of a rumbly strip stuff. I've not been to this track, but all of a sudden the driver's over there. He knew it was coming. He was having to wait on his throttle to try to get this thing to pivot and turn, and waited and finally just went ahead and he's still waiting. In fact, he backed out of the throttle just a tick. And then finally, as he comes off the end of it, which we can see up here, and if we look down here, oops, let me just.
As a driver coach, I'm going to tell you, as a driver coach, I'm going to tell you that the engine RPM going up and down quickly like that is the car actually physically coming off the ground. And then the TPS is actually the driver bumping around in the car. And his foot is coming off the gas in short, high frequency motions. Somebody made the observation of, look at the hand position. See, there is so much information. This is rich in information without having to open up a bunch of measures graphs. You have all this stuff right here.
Exactly. And even though he's off the track, he's had to open his hands up no matter what, because if he were to keep his hands, the car would snap loose, right? All of a sudden, since he's losing grip on his left-hand side tires, he's had to open his hands just to get, keep the car from doing something silly at that spot on the track. So
still turning more to the right because he wants to get back
trying.
on.
Yeah, he's trying, but he can't do it a whole bunch because all of a sudden he's, those left side tires have zero grip.
Let's go further forward a little bit.
Yeah, and then as we go, and I'm just going to drag it along a little bit. Now he's going to try to catch the car. He's wiggling back and forth with his steering hands, and then all of a sudden now, he's back on four wheels of pavement. He's back to full throttle, and he's going along. But look at his speed difference. He is 4 miles per hour difference because of that one small error. We walked it through. What happened? We seen a problem. The speed trace told us something happened, right? This piece right here where all of a sudden the blue trace went flat for a little bit and then started to parallel again. What happened? Where did it happen? We figured it out. We brought up the right channels that we thought we might want to look at: RPM, speed trace, throttle position. And then we dug in a little bit farther, looked at the video to figure out why did it happen. And Peter, all the stuff Peter's seen as it was coming up is the power of being able to look at it in this way. So perfect. Anything else you'd like to add about that particular instance, Peter?
Nothing more than this plays perfectly into our desire for a quick, immediate review of the data. The very fact that this now makes it easier to just justify in your mind what you did out there versus what you think you did out there is huge. This is not a tattletale. This is a tool to help you resolve differences between what you would like to do and what you thought you did and what you actually did. So it's really, really good. And I'm so happy to see this feature set because it's pivotal for my work and it's pivotal for everyone who wants to coach themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm gonna tie this all back over and then we're gonna jump out of this and kind of close this down a little bit. But the last step of this isn't just the what happened, where did it happen, why did it happen. That why is several layers deep, right? Peter talked about the rotation of the car wasn't quite exactly right early on. He's tried to still hustle the car. You're going to run out of speed, run out of track, I suppose. So the last part of the why to me is, yeah, we understand why it happened. The next thing to do is to go all the way back, the last 5 seconds before we got there. How can I help that driver not get themselves in that position again? What is it that we can help them do? Is it a turn in point way back here as he was entering that corner? If we're looking down here below, you can see that the blue one missed the turn in way down here, right? Compared to the red one, at least. We might want to bring up a third lap or something, but hustled it in along really speedy. You can see by the speed trace, got down here, has missed the entry, down by the picture at the lower left side, you can see that he's probably 5 or 6 feet over to the driver's left on missing the apex. That then sets up this entire problem that he has to pay for all the way over here. So the point is not just what happened at that point, but okay, we see it, but then how do I help that driver not do that again? Let's go back early in the corner and help them understand it fully.
And Roger, you've nailed perfectly Art's question about, as a professional coach, what would I do next? And that is work backwards.
Always. And Davin said the same thing. He said, hey, I'm looking at my speed trace, but I got to figure out why it happened, right? Not just that it happened. I got to understand what I was doing, the corner before, or did I get loose in the middle? And this is being very, very helpful in understanding that with the new software, turning this truly from a 20-minute quick look down to a 10-minute, because we put all the information in the same spot for you to do your 10-minute review.
It's going to save, and I guess bottom line, the reason why I drew the professional coaches into this and asked them the question, and the approach that I take, is because people are paying us a lot of money, and they're paying us a lot of money basically to distill a lot of information into an action plan. And that is what Race Studio 3 Analysis Beta does so well, because now we have context on the right side, we have concrete information of driver control inputs in the middle, and we have the amount of time it costs or gains at the bottom. So thank you again, Roger. This has been fantastic. We really appreciate everyone's patience, and thank you.
Perfect. Let me jump out and let me share back to the presentation materials. And we will, if I can get it to do it, there it goes. To kind of tidy all this up, Peter, while I'm tidying this up a little bit, take a look at any open questions that we have and see if there's something you might want to cover.
Well, I just wanted to say to Eric, who's talking about for a new track with unexperienced drivers, is there an easy way to judge gear changes? And yes, there is. I'm sure Matt is going to talk more about that in an RPM analysis as part of his 20-minute deeper dive. But the idea of selecting the information that you're looking at and determining that the RPM, if you're going through similar corners at similar RPMs, then your gear selection is correct. If you're going through the same speed or similar speed corners and the RPMs are different, you need to look at why. And you need to generally go down to a lower gear. So that does make a big difference. I guess that is really
and I think you already talked a little bit about steering speed a little bit too.
Yeah, the other thing I did want to say to Eric was, the fundamental skills, the best execution of fundamental skills do not vary between car, they do not vary between category, they do not vary between track, and they do not vary between competition and non-competition events. The best execution of fundamental skills is what you're looking for, and the goal is to be as quick and as efficient as you possibly can, and that includes gear shifts.
Exactly.
Again, I did answer that steering speed is super important, because in an effort to be smooth, a lot of drivers are slow with their steering input. You need to be as quick as you can without upsetting the car. So steering speed is an objective measure of a subjective observation by an instructor in the passenger seat of a driver's education event, or a coach who's looking at a video. The number is important.
And back to one last thing that I did want to mention that you touched on, it was placement of the camera. I wrote myself a note. I wanted to make sure I held that one. I've already jumped off of the Race Studio 3 beta, but the placement of that camera while getting the hands and feet, I am going to jump back to it really quickly, just so I can have it. Peter was talking about when the driver was back here, he could see that the car was pointed, rotated more directly towards the exit here on this particular screen, right? What I did want to talk about was the placement of the camera. While it is important to be able to see his hands, even his head, and maybe I even like it on the other side where you can see the hand going down to shifter. This has probably got paddles, but it is going to become more important, I think, that we get that camera mounted maybe a little bit more towards the middle of the car, so we're looking more directly out the steering wheel. for reasons like this, because it helps us get a better view out the windshield and understand even better, where the car is pointed and the rotation and a couple of other things. Something we all ought to be thinking about as we place our cameras for data when we're going to do data analysis, and the video being part of it. Just think about if you're placing way over on the side and you really wanted to see the driver and all the inputs, maybe bringing that more towards the middle of the car and getting the inputs at the edge of this video screen might be better for looking at the placement of the car on the track.
So that's one of the reasons why in the SmartyCam video that we did, the
Earlier
webinar,
yep.
we talked about the camera at least at eye level or above. And we talked about aiming the camera towards the center line of the front bumper cover on the car. And that really makes a difference. This is actually a 67-degree camera. The bulkhead on the LMP3 car is very close to the back of your head, so there's no room to put the camera back. So that's part of the reason why this looks the way it does. 84 might be a little better, and certainly something that I like. So
I just wanted to make sure we had that discussion where people think about where they place their camera, not just from where it want to see the hands, but actually looking out the front, because now you're going to be looking at speeds and when you got on the throttle and trying to figure out that why. I think the camera placement is going to be even more critical. So perfect. Let me jump back out to close this up and back to this. This video, as well as all of them that we've been doing, have been jumping out, and we get them up to YouTube just as quickly as we can. This one will be up on YouTube within an hour or so, and then we always down in the description box down below, we're putting links in there for different things that we may have linked during the in the chat box that you may or may not have been able to do. So Robbie always takes care of that as well. So make sure you go visit the YouTube site. All of our information ends up there from all of these webinars. The customer support, as Robbie was at a racetrack this last weekend. All of our guys, a lot of the guys we normally have here at racetracks, many of you are racing this coming weekend, so, and have been the last couple of weekends. Love it that we are out there able to help get back and working with you, seeing you face to face. But of course we have these webinars. I think we're going to continue on. You're all going to get an email in the next day or so where I'm going to extend these out. I think this Thursday was what we had scheduled as our last one. So I know you get a lot of emails from Zoom about these things, and hopefully it's not bugging you too much. You're going to get an extra one because we're going to extend this out probably through the end of August, and continue on with two a week. Whether or not you can make them or not, we hope obviously you can, but you certainly can be watching them on YouTube afterwards. It's part of our customer support program, and it's something that we enjoy doing, and adding that value for you. So keep that in mind. Let's see, the next webinar, Peter's mentioned it a couple of times. We're going to have our friend Matt. He's been hanging out in the chat box. I've seen him there a couple of times. We're going to talk about what I mentioned when we first started this one, which is we're going to try to bring in a number of different people. And while it is virtually the same kind of an idea, the basic concept of what is your data review when you come off the track, Matt is going to give an idea of the things that are important to him and the folks that he's worked with, just like Peter has. And we're going to have a go-kart one, and we're going to have a dirt oval one, all in the next few weeks. We're going to try to just stack in these things where we're talking about showing what different people that are experienced with the data and how they attack this you've downloaded the data, now what kind of a thing. So Matt is the next one we're going to do it. We're going to do that on Thursday, on July 16th, just in a couple of days. Matt and I have been already chatting about some of the stuff that he's going to cover. I appreciate Matt and a lot of the help that he does, and it'll be his fourth or fifth webinar as well. So appreciate all the folks that help us do these. So Matt next Thursday. The kind of to close it all up, there's some contact information for you if you're interested in getting a hold of Peter and asking a few more questions about some of his thing. He's always happy to answer. peterkrause.net. He's got a couple websites there that are important to him. Go Faster Now is one that I know he's working on and making it, having even more and more content all the time. So and then of course my information is there as well, and all of our YouTube social media stuff and websites and stuff for aimsports. Peter, anything in closing as we kind of wrap this one up here today? It's been a good one.
Just really pleased. Roger, thank you so much. I want to thank Emiliano. I want to thank Robbie. I want to thank Brick. I want to thank everybody. This is a great opportunity for people to to work on a variety of different things and learn to go faster with less risk. So thank you.
Perfect. I'd like to thank our guys that have been working hard in the background. There was a bunch of questions that were answered. Things obviously in the chat. Robbie and Cameron's off at a racetrack today, but we did have Brick and Robinson for a while, and of course Emiliano from Italy here joining us today. Again, one more thing. Within the next couple of weeks, you're going to see another Race Studio 3 beta program we're going to do. Try to do them every 2 or 3 weeks. We're going to have Emiliano on here. We're going to talk about some of the bugs that have been found, some of the enhancements that have been done, and get feedback from you guys in real time live. We love all the emails. Please keep them coming. Any bug reports, anything like that, click on that feedback button. Send it to software@aimsportline.com. But we want to have Emiliano here joining us and getting your feedback live. So we'll be doing those every couple of weeks as well, fitting them in with our data analysis stuff we've been talking about. So thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate everybody here. It's been a good one, and we'll see you in a couple of days with Matt Romanowski. Talk to you soon.